My name is Yolande Marcel. I was 31 when one text ended my relationship. My boyfriend Ethan sent it at 4:17 on a Thursday. Staying at Ryan's tonight. Stop being so controlling. I need space. We had been together 14 months. He had practically lived in my apartment for 7 of them. But he wasn't on the lease and had never paid rent. The arguments started over a $340 boutique charge on the credit card I'd given him for emergencies. When I asked about it, he exploded. You monitor everything I do. You used my card. You gave it to me. For emergencies. He hung up. Then came the message about needing space. I looked around my apartment. His clothes filled half my closet. His toiletries covered my bathroom. His shoes were by the door. His things were everywhere. I typed one word. Enjoy. Then I called a locksmith. By 8 that night, I had packed everything Ethan owned into 13 boxes. I photographed the contents, labeled each box, and confirmed with my property manager that Ethan wasn't a tenant. At 9:00 p.m., the locks were changed. At 6:04 the next morning, someone started pounding on my door. Natalie. Then I remembered. Not Natalie anymore. Yolande! Open the door! My phone showed 8 messages. My key isn't working. I need to get ready for work. Open the door. I walked to the door but didn't unlock it. Why isn't my key working? Ethan demanded. I changed the locks. Silence. You did what? You said you needed space. For one night. You should have said that. I live here. No, you stay here. You're not on the lease, and you don't pay rent. You can't just throw me out. You left. He hit the door with his palm. All this over $340? No, over what happened when I asked about it. I opened the door with the chain still attached. Ethan stood there in yesterday's clothes, suitcase beside him. My stuff? Packed. You packed everything? Yes. It took 6 trips to bring down the 13 boxes. By the last one, his eyes were wet. You're really doing this. Already done. He threatened to call a lawyer. I told him to. The next day, his mother called me. You threw my son onto the street. He chose to leave. He lived with you. He never paid rent. You'll regret this. Tell his lawyer I documented everything. I hung up. 3 days later, Ethan returned with Ryan and Ryan's girlfriend. You need to let him back in, she said. No. He has nowhere to go. He has Ryan's place. Ryan frowned. That's temporary. So was staying here. I closed the door. Security eventually removed them. Then Ethan sent me another message. I lived there 7 months. Half the rent is $550. You owe me $3,850. Pay by Monday, or I'm taking you to court. I laughed. You never paid rent. You owe me $340 plus groceries and utilities. Small claims sounds great. He didn't respond. Instead, his mother accused me of stealing his belongings. I sent her more than 50 time-stamped photographs. Then came anonymous noise complaints. Building cameras proved they were false. And on day 10, Ethan returned alone. This time he knocked softly. Yolande, please. No. I made a mistake. Silence. I miss you. I leaned against the door. You miss the apartment. That's not true. You miss free rent. I love you. You loved having access to everything. His voice cracked. I have nowhere to go. You had somewhere to go when you left. He sat outside my door for nearly 90 minutes before finally leaving. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because less than a week later, police showed up at my apartment. And 2 days after that, Ethan tried to use my credit card to buy a $2,399 MacBook Pro. That was when our breakup stopped being emotional and became criminal. Week 2 started with the police at my door. Ma'am, we received a report that you're withholding your boyfriend's belongings. Ex-boyfriend. I handed them my phone. Photos of all 13 boxes. Timestamps, even pictures showing Ethan standing beside them in the hallway. The younger officer looked at his partner. So he received everything? Every single item. They left 10 minutes later. I thought Ethan had finally run out of ways to cause problems. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. Amazon. Your order has shipped. I hadn't ordered anything. I opened the notification. MacBook Pro 2000, $399. Shipping address? Ryan's apartment? Payment method? My credit card. I went cold. I immediately called Amazon, canceled the order, changed every password, and locked the account. Then I called the police. My ex-boyfriend just used my card without permission. The detective who contacted me later was direct. Did he previously have authorized access? Yes, while we were together. And now? Everything was revoked the night he left. With this amount, we may be looking at felony fraud. 3 hours later, Ethan called from a blocked number. You called the police on me. You used my credit card. I thought I still had permission. To spend $2,400? I was going to pay you back. You weren't even going to tell me. Silence. Then his voice changed. They said I could be arrested. That isn't because I called them, Ethan. It's because of what you did. Please drop it. No, this could ruin my life. You should have thought about that first. I hung up. Then his friends started messaging me. You're trying to get him arrested over money? No. I reported someone trying to take $2,399 from me. There was a difference. I blocked them. But Ethan still wasn't finished. Tuesday night of week 3. I was already in bed when my Ring camera alerted me. Motion detected. I opened the feed. Ethan was standing outside my apartment. At first, I thought he was going to knock. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A plastic card. He pushed it against the door, tried the handle, then crouched near the lock. Every few seconds, he looked at his phone. He was watching a tutorial. I stared at the screen in disbelief. For 8 minutes, Ethan tried to get through the door. I'd changed specifically to keep him out. I called 911. My ex-boyfriend is trying to break into my apartment right now. I have him on camera. The officers arrived quickly. Ethan was still in the hallway. I watched through the camera as he raised his hands. I forgot something inside, he told them. One officer looked at the lock. Then why didn't you knock? Ethan had no answer. They arrested him. His mother bailed him out the next morning. Later that day, the fraud detective called. So he tried breaking into your apartment? Yes. You have the video? All 8 minutes. He sighed. Send it to me. 2 days later, Ethan's public defender contacted me. Ethan was willing to repay the attempted laptop purchase and the original boutique charge, total $2,739. In exchange, they wanted the fraud charge reduced. I agreed under one condition. He pays everything back, completes the required community service, and I wanted in writing that he stays away from me in my apartment. That can be arranged. The fraud charge was eventually reduced. The attempted break-in became trespassing. But there was another consequence Ethan hadn't expected. My property management company reviewed the Ring footage. Then they permanently banned him from every property they owned. All 18 buildings. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had told me he needed space. Now he couldn't legally come near my apartment. I thought that would finally end it. But 3 months later, I learned losing access to my home had only been the beginning of what Ethan was about to lose. 3 months later, Ethan was still paying for that night. The court ordered him to repay the $2,739, $500 immediately, then $320 a month until the balance was gone. He missed the second payment. For a few days, nothing happened. Then the prosecutor sent him a warning letter reminding him that restitution was part of the agreement that had kept the fraud charge from becoming much worse. Somehow, Ethan found the money almost immediately after that. Funny how quickly "I can't afford it" becomes payment sent when consequences are attached. But the money wasn't his biggest problem. The misdemeanor fraud conviction started following him everywhere. Ethan applied for 3 apartments. All 3 rejected him. One wanted a larger deposit, before eventually declining him anyway. Another rejected the application after the background check, so he stayed on Ryan's couch. The same Ryan who had once stood outside my apartment telling me I was cruel for refusing to let Ethan back inside. At first, Ryan defended him. Then he actually had to live with him. Ryan and Chloe were expecting a baby, which meant their spare space wasn't really spare anymore. Ethan was supposed to stay for a few days. A few days became weeks, then months. According to a mutual friend, he rarely cleaned, barely contributed to groceries, and treated Ryan's apartment the same way he'd treated mine. Like someone else's generosity was simply part of his income. Apparently, Ethan's mother visited constantly too, and whenever she did, the 2 of them would sit there complaining about me. One evening, Ryan finally snapped. "You've been here for 2 months, Ethan. At some point, this stops being Yolande's fault." Ethan apparently didn't take that well. He accused Ryan of choosing my side. Ryan answered, "There aren't sides anymore. I just understand why she changed the locks." When that story reached me, I didn't feel victorious. Mostly, I felt relieved, because someone else was finally seeing what I'd spent months refusing to admit. Ethan didn't need help getting back on his feet. He wanted another person to carry him. His job wasn't going much better. He worked in retail management and had been expecting a promotion before everything happened. More money, more responsibility, a better schedule. Then the company ran a background check. The fraud conviction appeared. The promotion disappeared. A few weeks later, I heard he'd actually been moved out of management because company policy prohibited employees with theft-related convictions from holding certain positions. His mother blamed me for that too. The Facebook messages started arriving late at night. "You destroyed my son's career." Then, "One mistake shouldn't ruin someone's future." Then, "I hope you're happy with yourself." I ignored the first few. After message 8, I blocked her. Because there was something I had finally understood. Ethan's family wanted me to feel responsible for every consequence Ethan experienced. If he couldn't find an apartment, I was cruel. If his job suffered, I was vindictive. If Ryan got tired of supporting him, somehow I had caused that too. But nobody wanted to talk about the choices between Ethan's first text and his arrest. Nobody wanted to mention the false property complaint, the fake noise reports, the laptop, the 8-minute video of him trying to get through my locked door. Apparently those were mistakes. Changing my locks was the unforgivable part. Meanwhile, my own life became almost embarrassingly peaceful. The apartment felt different without Ethan. Not just cleaner, lighter. I replaced some furniture I'd never liked, but had kept because Ethan did. Moved the couch, rearranged the bedroom, cleared an entire bathroom shelf that had once been covered in his things. For the first time in months, I invited friends over without worrying that Ethan would complain we were too loud or disappear into the bedroom because he didn't like someone. One Saturday night, 5 of us sat around my living room eating takeout and laughing until nearly midnight. At one point I looked around and realized something. I hadn't checked anyone's mood all evening. I hadn't wondered whether Ethan was irritated. I hadn't apologized for taking up space in my own home. That realization stayed with me longer than anything else. Financially, I locked everything down. The compromised credit card was canceled completely. The replacement had one authorized user, me. Every account got a different password. 2-factor authentication went on everything. I checked my credit report. Changed security questions. Removed saved payment methods from accounts Ethan might once have accessed. The physical lock had taken one evening. The digital ones took considerably longer. Dating? Absolutely not. Friends occasionally tried. "I know someone you'd like." No. "He's actually really nice." Still no. I wasn't angry at men. I wasn't afraid of relationships. I simply enjoyed not having to negotiate my peace with another person. Then Ethan's restitution payments started arriving. I saved most of the money, but I used some of it to buy one completely unnecessary thing: a beautiful espresso machine I'd wanted for months. The first morning I used it, I stood in my kitchen listening to the machine hiss while sunlight came through the window. No Ethan asking why I'd spent money on it. No argument, no accusation that I was controlling while he used something I'd paid for. Just coffee. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. And the longer Ethan was gone, the more warning signs I remembered. There had been the $180 dinner months earlier. He'd gone out with friends and forgotten his wallet, so he'd used my emergency card. When I questioned it, he laughed. "Relax. I'll get the next one." He never did. Then there was the way he'd moved in without actually moving in. First, a toothbrush. Then clothes. Then shoes. Then a gaming console. Then packages started arriving at my address. Somehow, we never had the conversation where Ethan asked, "Can I live here?" He simply stopped leaving, and I allowed it because I thought making room for someone was what love looked like. The clearest warning sign came from his mother. Months before the breakup, she'd told me, "Ethan says you're incredibly generous letting him live there." At the time, I'd smiled. Later, I realized what bothered me about it. Ethan had described the arrangement as something I was giving him, which meant he knew exactly what it was: free housing. He just didn't think that generosity should ever end. That was the real lesson. I'd confused helping someone with being responsible for them, and Ethan had confused being loved with having unlimited access. Access to my apartment, my money, my patience, my forgiveness. Even after we broke up, he still believed some part of my life belonged to him. That's why the laptop mattered so much. It wasn't only $2,399. It was Ethan still believing my card was available because it had once been available. That's why the attempted break-in mattered, too. A locked door should have been enough. For Ethan, it was apparently a challenge. People still occasionally asked whether changing the locks that first night had been too extreme. Maybe from the outside it looked that way. One argument, one text, then new locks. But I always remembered what happened afterward. Ethan claimed I withheld his belongings, even though I had photographs proving otherwise. He filed complaints against me. He tried to use my credit card for a $2,399 laptop. Then he stood outside my apartment for 8 minutes trying to defeat a lock he knew had been changed, specifically to keep him out. I didn't destroy Ethan's future. I stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. There is a difference. The last update I heard came through a mutual friend. Ryan and Chloe finally told Ethan he needed to leave before the baby arrived. His mother agreed to take him temporarily. Apparently, Ethan complained that everyone had abandoned him. I didn't respond when I heard that. Because by then, Ethan wasn't my problem anymore. And that might have been the biggest change of all. He had called me controlling because I asked about $340, charged to my own credit card. Then he told me he needed space, so I gave him space. More than he expected. The locks I changed that Thursday weren't only on my apartment. I changed the locks on my bank accounts, on my boundaries, on my guilt, and on the part of me that believed loving someone meant continually proving how much I was willing to tolerate. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are. Ethan did it in one text message. "Stop being so controlling. I need space." For months, I wondered whether I had reacted too quickly. Then came the false complaints. The fraud, the police, the ring footage. And eventually I understood. I hadn't changed the locks too soon. I'd simply stopped ignoring the reasons I should have changed them earlier. Ethan wanted space. He got it. And I got my home back. More importantly, I got myself back.